Hello, more of my plants are dead. How's that for an introduction? So what I want to do today is show you what else has died since I think the last update when I thought more things lived. We have had very up and down spikes in temperature. Like I even think tomorrow night I have to bring my peppers and what else do I have? My caladiums back in overnight. And I think a dip earlier in April just took out more of my plants than I thought. I gave them a lot of time to recover. They didn't. There's been some fungal issues with some plants on the front deck, which I'm going to go over at the end and tell you how I deal with fungal issues so that hopefully it doesn't spread. But I want to tell you and keep you updated on what is dead for two different reasons. One is maybe you can learn from my mistakes, and that's always helpful. And the second is that everyone kills plants, and I feel like I thought when I started gardening that if I killed a plant, it meant I failed, and I didn't want anyone to know that a plant died. And if that's the case, then no one is a successful gardener, because I was even watching Gardener's World recently, and Monty Don showed some of the plants that he killed. So if Monty Don can kill plants and it's okay, I can kill plants and it's okay. So what I'm going to do, I'm on the back deck right now. I'll show you what hasn't lived. Most of the things that have died are already gone because I was kind of pulling them from my garden like one at a time as they kind of bit the dust. Some things I'm like sadder about than others, although I'm trying not to be like too sad over any of the losses. And I also want to tell you about what I've learned, because I do feel like anytime something goes wrong in the garden, that means hopefully I've learned something from that so that I can try to prevent it as much as I can in the future. So we'll start on the back deck here. I will talk about what has died, and then I'll go over what I'm going to do differently, and then we'll head over to the front deck and I'll talk more about the fungal issues. So first off, all three of the hydrangeas I overwintered in the greenhouse up here have died. I think they were in this pot, and that pot right back there. So they had budded up when they were still in the greenhouse. I had a plastic greenhouse right here that I was testing overwintering some of my plants. They had buds forming, and then it was almost like everything kind of stopped. The buds that were green turned brown. I had been scraping the stem and it was green. Then I was scraping the stem and it was brown. So those have officially died. This I'm leaving empty because I think I'm going to try one last time for a rose, which I think also died in the previous video. So that I'm leaving empty for now. This I just planted up with different varieties of plants. I have the tags here. So I have Super Bells Double Amber. I have Lavender Dreams Cleome. And then this is just a zinnia that I actually got from a friend. I don't remember, or I don't know the name of it or where she got it from, but that is what I put in here. Then over there, I've got another hydrangea. So in place of the one that died, which I can't remember which variety was in here, I have a hydrangea called Wee Bit Grumpy, and this one stays small. So let me see what the maximum height on here is. So it's going to get 2 feet tall and 2.5 feet wide. So that's going to be a good size. I don't know if I've technically grown like a mini hydrangea or a dwarf size hydrangea in any of my containers. I always just kind of grew regular ones with the assumption that someday I would have to repot. So right now it looks obviously a lot smaller than the container, but this will grow. I need to make an actual tag for that instead of this. Oh, also, let me check what the zone was on here. So the zone on this one is 5 through 9. So I'm still trying to decide what exactly I'm going to do for overwintering. I'll talk about that in a little bit from basically what I have learned. But yeah, this is the hydrangea I'm going to try out in this container. I'm going to add some soil acidifier to try to keep it that bluey purpley color, and we will see how it does. Now I also have these two tiny quickfire hydrangeas. These I got from the Grand Garden Show. One was in my gift bag and the other was in the gift bag for my husband. Obviously both of these are now mine. These will grow I think to about 3 feet tall and wide, so they're going to end up a little bit larger than the Wee Bit Grumpy hydrangea, and these are going to have white flowers. Now, I did get these last year and I successfully overwintered them in these pots in the garage. So I think that's going to be my overwintering plan for all of my hydrangeas going forward. They are obviously in pots that are too small. I think I'm going to put them in these pots in this little shade border when I get that planted up. And then I'll probably have to get them maybe in a larger pot too after that. I don't know, we'll kind of see how much growth they put on this year. But at least I know these survived the winter. The only other plant that died back here was my cherry tree, and obviously not this one. So I got 2 dwarf cherry trees from Spring Hill Nursery for cross-pollination. This one right here came maybe about a few inches shorter than it is now, and it had leaves on it. The other one was like half to a third the size of this one. No leaves. I don't even necessarily know if it had buds yet. It was basically like a little stick. And normally they'll send plants out when it's time to move them outside, so I put all of my trees outside and didn't think to bring it in to protect it. In fact, maybe I did like 1 or 2 nights, but I just left it out in some weather that it couldn't handle. Similar to the hydrangea, all the buds turned brown. All of the stem inside was brown. There was no more green left. So unfortunately, that one is gone. So that means I'm only gonna have 1 cherry tree, at least right now. And I think that's what I'm gonna stick to for this year. I don't think I'm gonna replace it with another cherry tree. I'm starting to wonder if I'm gonna have enough room realistically for 5 fruit trees back here. So I have the beach plum, I have the 2 apple trees, which are columnar apple trees, so they actually shouldn't take up that much space. They'll just grow very vertical and straight. So I think I'm gonna see how the 1 cherry tree does this year. I think the one that I have is the Wowza dwarf cherry tree. The one that I lost was the Romea dwarf cherry tree. If it seems like it does well and I want to get a second one, I will next year, but I'm going to get a larger one. So I want to get it a little bit larger starting off so it has better survival rates in case I accidentally leave it outside. So that was 100% my fault for not giving it more protection. I mean, I can blame Mother Nature. Maybe I'll take a little bit of blame off of me and just put more on Mother Nature. But I just should have been more careful with keeping that inside. Now with the hydrangeas, so all 3 of them that are now dead did seem, like I said, to survive over winter. And I talked to one of my friends who works at a garden center, and she just said that that's fairly common, that it happens if you move something out of a semi-protected area at the wrong time. It can just shock the plant and die. Now, it's not like my greenhouse was heated. It was just a regular plastic greenhouse that was out here. Maybe it took the edge off a little bit. It was fairly crowded in there, but like I said, there was so much humidity, everything stayed moist throughout the season, so I think it did a pretty good job, much better than just leaving it outside. So I think had I left those hydrangeas in the shut greenhouse until they leafed out, I think they would have been fine this year. That's what seems to be the difference between things that lived and things that died, is that if they already had leaves on them, they did fine. If they were just at the bud stage, they died. So with the tiny quick fire hydrangeas, those I kept in the garage over winter. I actually brought inside here to kind of force them a little bit and get them to leaf out, and then I brought them out here. So again, they had leaves on before coming outside. I think I should have left my 3 hydrangeas in the greenhouse. So what I'm going to do this winter, I'm still going back and forth. Either I'm going to take them all down to the garage, which I shouldn't have any problem carrying the tiny quick fire in the pots that I'm going to plant them in, because those are plastic. I am just a little bit worried about that one there, because that is in a little bit of a heavier pot. So we'll see. That one again is also only down to zone 5. The other ones are down to zone 3. And for me to feel comfortable leaving it out completely, I'd want it at least to be a zone 4. Again, the greenhouse did provide some protection, so I don't know if I'm going to leave that one in the greenhouse and just keep it in there much longer, if I'm going to carry it all the way down to the garage to keep it alive. That is all still up in the air. So we will see what my plan is with that. But yeah, my major takeaway was keep things protected until they leaf out and then move them out, and then also definitely move more tender things inside if we have those temperature dips. We are on the front deck now, and everything that died up here, at least as far as I can tell, died from blight. So in the past 4 years that I've been gardening here, I've lost 2 blueberry bushes to blight, now potentially a 3rd one, and I think an aronia berry also got blight as well. So earlier this season, I showed you my blueberry bush that definitely had it. I trimmed it back. I was going to see how it did. I ended up having to pull that one. I forgot if I talked through that or not. But because I still had a second blueberry bush for pollination reasons, I replaced the one that died. Well, now that second one that I had before, not the one I replaced, but the one that was older, I'm pretty sure also has blight. So I'll show you that in just a second. And then my aronia berry bush, which I got 2 years ago, and I got it from a bed and breakfast that my husband and I used to go to all the time in Oglesby, Illinois, and now they are closed, so there was some sentimental value. So it did the same thing where the buds were forming, I think some of the leaves had opened up, and then after the cold snap it kind of stopped, and I was like, well, maybe it'll recover after, it starts to warm up. And then I just kind of let it go, do its thing, and it didn't. And then I realized it was doing the same thing with the blight, where everything at the end of the tips of the stems kind of starts to shrivel up and turn brown or red. And I cut some of it back, and then it started continuing still down the plant. So I pulled that one. So that one was probably, I say, the saddest of them all. However, I will say that with aronia berries, I didn't love them. Again, it was more the emotional attachment. Like, I didn't really enjoy eating them just plain. I think I threw them in a smoothie, and one bush didn't produce like a ton. I think I made one smoothie with everything that it produced last year, so it wasn't like it was incredibly productive. So I'm trying to feel okay about letting that one go. But now let me take you over to the blueberry bush that I think also has blight. So this is the bush that I just replaced this year. So I just got this from a local garden center this year. It is doing great. I mean, again, it was already leafed out when I got it. I have been seeing some aphids on it, which I need to do another spray with the hose. You can see the aphids. Can you really see those aphids? I don't know, they might be too small to really, oh, you should be able to see it right there. So yeah, no other issues on this one other than minor pest issues. But then we have this one. So it put on a ton of new growth this year, early in the spring. It formed a bunch of buds, and I just kind of had it in the corner here, and I was like, oh, it's just taking a little bit slower to leaf out than the other plants. It did set some flowers, which you can kind of see on the end of the stems, and then I realized that it hadn't put on any new growth. Like, it was kind of at one stage of a few leaves and then stopped. And the same thing that happened with my other blueberry bush now seems to be happening to this one. So if I come in closer here, I think you can see at the end how that stem is turning brown. The flowers there at the end are also turning brown and dying, and not in the way where they're dying to make blueberries, but in the way where just the end of the stem is dying. And it seems to be happening at the end of most of them. Now, I already did cut off some of the stems, because when you see blight, what you want to do is cut at least 6 inches below where you see the signs of it to hopefully stop it from spreading. So I did that on a few branches, but then it keeps showing up on the other ones. So I'm going to trim off some more today. But I mean, there's so few canes, I feel like, that are left. I mean, even that one down there, I'm going to have to trim. That I'm going to bet this one's probably going to be a goner. So let me talk a little bit about fungal issues right now and what I do to treat them. So blight is a fungus, and because of that, it can be spread by spores. So I always want to be careful to treat as soon as possible, which is why I'm going to cut those stems in just a second. But I'm also not going to give it forever to see if it recovers. If it seems like it just keeps spreading further and further down, I'm just going to pull the plant. Now, when I have a plant with a fungal issue and I remove it from the pot, I also throw away all the soil in there, because the fungus could be in the soil and then spread to whatever you plant in there next. So I dump out all the soil, and this is what I did with the new blueberry bush, which just died of blight. Was it last month? So much blight death, it's hard to remember what happened when. So I dumped out all the soil, I threw it away, don't compost it or anything like that. Then I rinsed out the pot here with the hose. Then I took the pot inside and I sanitized it with a 10% bleach solution, so 90% water, 10% bleach. I also then just gave it a scrub with soap and water, because I like to do that too. Then I brought it back out and replanted it with fresh potting soil and put that new blueberry bush in there. When I'm also working with any sort of fungal issues, anything that I'm using to, like with my pruners, for example, any tools like that, I make sure that I bring out an alcohol wipe with me so that I am sanitizing between cuts. Because let's say I cut into one stem and I cut and get some of the fungus on the pruners, I don't want to cut into maybe another stem that maybe was healthy where I made the cut, but now the spores have traveled and infected from one cut to the next. So I do wipe with an alcohol wipe that I just get a box of from Amazon. And then once I'm done using the pruners completely, I take them inside, I scrub them with soap and water, and I scrub them again with the alcohol wipes just to make sure that they are clean and ready to use for whatever other plant that is healthy. I also like to use my bare hands instead of gloves because it can also get onto your gloves and you can transfer it that way, and it's much easier to wash my hands than it is to wash a pair of my gloves. So yeah, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to trim those branches. I'll probably give it, I think within a week from now, I'll see if I continue to see the blight spread. I'm just going to pull the whole plant, and I'm not going to get a new blueberry plant because I told myself if this happens again, which now this will be the third time, it's not worth it to keep putting blueberries in there just to have them die. I've never had issues with raspberries, so for me it's worth keeping plants in my garden that I know I don't have issues with rather than plants that I do have issues with over and over again. Some other things you can do in general to prevent blight is you can make sure there's good aeration in the soil. So I just added more perlite to the new one that I planted, the new blueberry bush, to make sure that there's more aeration there. I also have this, which I just got actually for the fruit trees, the new fruit trees on the back deck. And this is copper fungicide, and it can actually treat, well, here, I'll read what it treats. It treats powdery mildew, rust, black spot, leaf and fruit spot, downy mildew, fruit rot, blight, and rust. Now this says you can begin treatment 2 weeks before the disease normally appears. And with blight, that normally appears on blueberries in either May or June, which is right now, and it also usually affects younger plants. I already sprayed this when I trimmed the stems a few days ago, so I'm not going to spray it right now. I'm going to wait for a few more days, give it another spray. I did already spray the new one too, just to, again, hopefully prevent anything from happening on that plant. But yeah, I'm going to try this out and see how it does. Now with blueberry bushes, you can have blueberries if you just have one bush. They just won't necessarily be as plentiful as if you had cross-pollination between two different types of bushes. So I'm just going to stick with, again, I'm assuming that the one is going to die because that's what it looks like. So I'm going to stick with just the one for now. I'm trying to think of what I want to put if the blueberry plant does die into that other pot, because it is pretty, but it's a pot that I don't think I want to keep outside. So I might switch to annuals for that. Because it's ceramic and pretty, and I'm always terrified it's going to break. So yeah, I think that's what my plan is going to be for blueberries. And the thing that I learned from this, well, two things, is that I should use this as a preventative spray, and two, that I just don't think blueberries are right for me in my garden. Again, I have limited space. I want something that I'm not going to have to replace all of the time unless it's an annual. So yeah, I think it's going to be time to say goodbye to blueberries in my garden. I don't know, we'll see. So yeah, I think that is everything that's dead, hopefully, so far at least. I will keep you updated on what else dies. But yeah, it's pretty normal. It can be sad, obviously, but it's pretty normal to lose things in your garden, and as long as you learn something from it, I still say that that's a win. So yeah, I guess let me know if anything's died in your garden recently. I will keep you updated on this blueberry bush and how it does kind of going into the next few weeks, or you might see me replanting something in there relatively quickly. But thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.